Clara was 19 when her father slammed his hand on the table and said he had made up his mind. She was in the kitchen, peeling potatoes, and the sound of her palm against the wood caused the machete to slip and cut the tip of her index finger. Blood dripped onto the white potato, and no one asked if she was all right. Her mother just looked away, as if she already knew it was pointless to ask. Her father continued speaking, with the voice of someone who settles business, and that's exactly what he was doing. His youngest daughter was going to marry the son of the man who owned the land on the other side of the river. It wasn't a proposal, it was a sentence. The town of Cerro Manso was small enough that all the news arrived before lunch. The next day, when Clara went to get bread at So Arnaldo's bakery, there were already people looking at her with something between pity and curiosity. Some older women congratulated her, with that tight smile one gives when they know there's nothing to celebrate. Clara thanked them, lowered her head, and returned home with the bread under her arm and her finger bandaged in a piece of old cloth. The groom's name was Renato Figueiredo. He was 34 years old, with a broad jaw, thick hands, and a reputation that always loomed a step ahead of him. They said his first wife had left in the middle of the night, taking nothing, not even her shoes. They said he drank too much and spoke too little. They said he had a way of looking at people as if he were calculating their worth. Clara had never exchanged more than 10 words with him. But fear already resided within her even before she truly met him. Because in Cerro Manso, when the men were silent, the women learned to fear what would come next. Clara didn't cry in front of her father. She had learned early on that tears in that house were treated as provocation. But she cried at night in the dark, her face buried in the pillow, biting the fabric so that her sister Luisa, who slept in the bed next to her, wouldn't hear. Luisa heard anyway, but pretended not to. The two had this silent agreement. Pretending that the pain didn't exist was their way of protecting each other. The weeks leading up to the wedding were like a countdown to something Clara couldn't name. It wasn't exactly fear. It was a kind of erasure. Each passing day she felt as if a part of her was being packed away and stored in a box that someone else would carry. Her mother sewed the wedding dress from cheap fabric that yellowed at the hem. Clara tried on the dress one afternoon, alone, in front of the cracked mirror in her room, and hardly recognized herself. Not because she looked beautiful or different, but because the girl looking back seemed to have already given up on something. She had a notebook. It was the only thing that was truly hers. In it, Clara drew faces, animals, flowers, houses that never existed. She drew with a short pencil, almost to the stub, and each drawing was done with a delicacy that no one in that house would have imagined she possessed. The notebook was hidden under the mattress, between the torn cover and the rusty spring. Clara never showed those drawings to anyone, not because I was ashamed, but because she knew no one would look. The wedding took place on a Saturday in September, under a heavy sky and a wind that carried the scent of damp earth. The church in Cerro Manso was small, with peeling walls and a plaster saint missing his right hand. Clara entered the aisle on her father's arm, who walked briskly as if trying to get rid of a task. Renato waited at the altar, wearing a dark suit that seemed tight on his shoulders. He didn't smile when he saw her. He simply nodded as if confirming receipt of a package. Clara said yes in such a low voice that the priest had to ask her to repeat it. She repeated it, and this time the sound came out a little firmer, but not more convinced. The ring went onto her finger with difficulty. It was slightly too big, and Clara had to clench her hand so it wouldn't slip. That gesture, her hand clenched around the loose ring, was somehow the most honest image of everything that was happening. The party was simple. Plastic tables, food made by the neighbors, a borrowed speaker playing music that no one had chosen. Clara sat next to her husband and ate little. Renato drank beer in silence, greeted the men who came to shake his hand, and occasionally looked at Clara with an expression she couldn't decipher. It wasn't affection, it wasn't cruelty, it was something in between. A kind of continuous assessment, as if he were trying to decide what to do with her. When it was time for gifts, Clara's mother brought a box of pots and pans. Renato's father brought a deed to a piece of land at the back of the property. The neighbors brought towels, glasses, a set of cutlery. Everything was practical, functional, devoid of any affection, until someone placed a different package on the table. Small, wrapped in brown paper tied with string, without a card, without a name, without a return address. Renato looked at the package suspiciously. Clara reached out and touched the paper with her fingertips, as if she could guess what was inside. She slowly untied the string, opened the paper, and inside was a dark wooden box the size of a book. Clara opened the lid and stopped. Inside the box was a set of colored pencils. Not the cheap pencils you buy at the corner stationery store. They were professional pencils, from a brand Clara had once seen in an old magazine she found at the dentist's office, the kind of pencils real artists used. 72 colors, each with a name that sounded like poetry. There was also a pad of thick, snow-white paper, with a texture that Clara felt on her fingertips, and that made her eyes burn without warning. She remained silent for so long that the people around her began to look at each other. Renato frowned. Clara's father cleared his throat impatiently. Someone made a comment in a low voice, something about it being a useless gift. But Clara heard nothing more. She held those pencils as if someone had just returned to her, something that had been stolen long ago. And for the first time that entire day, her eyes held something that wasn't fear. That night, at Renato's house, which was now her house too, although nothing there seemed to belong to her, Clara put the pencil case under her pillow and slept with her hand resting on the wood. Renato slept on the other side of the bed, his back to her, and snored even before she had blown out the candle. The first few months were exactly what Clara had feared, though not in the way she expected. Renato didn't yell, he didn't hit, but he didn't speak either. The house was in immense silence, interrupted only by the mechanical sounds of routine, the door opening, the chair being dragged, the plate clattering on the table. Clara cooked, washed, swept, tended the garden, fed the chickens, and at the end of the day felt as if she had been sucked dry from the inside out, like a fruit squeezed until there was no pulp left. Renato looked at her as if she were a piece of furniture, something that had a function but no meaning. She began drawing in secret. She would wait for Renato to leave for work in the fields, and then open the box of pencils with almost religious care. She would draw at the kitchen table with the door locked, her ears alert to any sound of footsteps in the yard. At first, she drew the same things as always: flowers, faces, invented landscapes. But little by little, the drawings changed. She began to draw what she really saw: the yard, the crooked fence, the morning light streaming through the dusty window, Renato's sleeping face, with a gentleness he had never felt when he woke up. There was something about those drawings that Clara couldn't explain. They weren't just beautiful, they told a story. Each stroke seemed to carry a weight, an expectation, a question that had never been asked aloud. She drew with the same intensity that other people pray with, as if she were depositing everything she couldn't say on those papers. One day, Renato returned earlier than expected. Clara didn't hear his footsteps. When he opened the kitchen door, she was bent over her paper, pencils scattered across the table, and a drawing almost finished. It was the river that ran behind the property, its shaded bank and a heron perched on a rock. Renato stood in the doorway, speechless. Clara looked up and felt her blood run cold. She remained motionless, waiting for the reprimand, the mockery, the order, to put everything away and get back to real work. But Renato said none of that. He approached slowly, looked at the drawing closely, and stood there for what seemed like an endless amount of time. Then he looked at Clara with an expression she had never seen on him before. It wasn't his usual cold assessment. It was something else, something more like astonishment, or perhaps recognition, as if he were seeing for the first time someone who lived in the same house as him. He didn't say anything. He just left the kitchen and went to wash his hands at the sink outside. Clara put away the pencils with trembling hands, unsure if that had been good or bad. That night, during dinner, Renato did something he had never done before. He asked. Not about the drawings. He asked about her. Where did that way of holding the pencil come from? If she had learned it from someone? If she had done it since she was a child? Clara responded with short, wary phrases, like an animal approaching an outstretched hand, unsure whether it will receive affection or a slap. But she responded, and Renato listened. And that night, for the first time in months, the silence between them wasn't empty. It was simply silence. The following weeks brought a change that no one noticed from the outside. Renato was still quiet in front of others. He still had a hard face and hands heavy from work, but inside the house, something had shifted. He began to bring things. Not flowers, not romantic gifts. He didn't know how to do that. But once he brought a branch of a yellow IP tree that he found beautiful. Another time, a smooth river stone with a natural pattern. One afternoon, he brought an old picture frame he found in a corner of a shed and said, without looking her in the eye, that perhaps it would work for one of the drawings. Clara didn't know what to make of it. She didn't know how to interpret a man who had treated her like an object for months, and now brought her branches and stones as clumsy offerings. But something inside her, that part that hadn't yet been packaged and stored away, recognized in those gestures an attempt, a clumsy, disjointed, almost childish attempt to say something he had no words to say. She framed the drawing of the heron and hung it on the living room wall. Renato looked at the picture during dinner and said nothing, but he didn't take it down. The town began to notice Clara in a different way when Dona Hilda, the school teacher, saw one of her drawings by chance. Clara had gone to get eggs at the store and forgot a folded piece of paper inside the basket. Dona Gilda opened it out of curiosity and remained silent for almost a minute. Then she asked if Clara had more. Clara said yes in her usual low voice, and Dona Gilda asked to see them. That same week, 5 of Clara's drawings were displayed on the school wall, next to the children's work, but so different from them that anyone who passed by stopped to look. The people of Cerro Manso weren't used to seeing beauty emerge from within someone they had chosen not to see. Clara was the girl who had been sold in an arranged marriage, the quiet wife of Renato Figueiredo, The young woman who walked with her head down and only spoke when asked. No one expected her to have anything to show. And when the drawings appeared, there was a collective silence that seemed almost embarrassing, as if the entire town realized at the same time that it had looked at Clara for years without ever having seen her. Donna Gilda wrote a letter to an art school in the capital. She attached photos of her drawings. 3 weeks later, a reply arrived. They wanted to meet the artist. They offered her a scholarship. Clara read the letter sitting on the yard bench, with the chickens pecking around her feet. She read it twice, 3 times. Then she folded the paper and stared at the horizon as one looks at a door that has always been locked and suddenly appears ajar. The fear returned. Not the old fear of Renato, but a new, deeper fear. The fear of wanting something, of believing she deserved it. That night, she showed the letter to Renato. She placed the paper on the table next to his plate and stood with her hands clasped in front of her, waiting. Renato read slowly, because he read slowly, moving his lips with each word. When he finished, he remained silent for a time that Clara felt in her bones. Then he looked up and said, in the softest voice she had ever heard come from that mouth, that she should go. Clara didn't understand immediately. She asked what, and he repeated it. He said she should go, that this place, and he made a vague gesture with his hand that seemed to encompass the house, the yard, her whole life, wasn't a place for what she knew how to do. He said he didn't know how to give much, that he never knew, that he probably never would, but that he knew those drawings were something he didn't quite understand, and that if someone was offering her a door, she had to go through it. Clara cried, not the restrained tears of before, hidden under her pillow, an open cry, her face uncovered in front of him, without shame, and Renato did something he hadn't done even once since their wedding. He stood up, walked around the table, and placed his hand on her shoulder. Not a hug, not a kiss, just a hand on her shoulder, heavy and firm, as if to say, I'm here, without knowing how to say it. The news that Clara was going to study in the capital spread through Cerro Manso like wildfire. The reactions were as expected. Surprise, disbelief, envy disguised as concern, and, in the most generous corners, a reluctant admiration. Clara's father said nothing. Her mother wept softly in the kitchen, it unclear whether it was from pride or fear. Luisa, her sister, hugged Clara for so long that when they let go, they were both laughing and crying at the same time. On the eve of the trip, Clara was packing her suitcase, a borrowed suitcase with a mended zipper, when she found something she hadn't seen before at the bottom of the pencil case, a small folded piece of paper, hidden under the velvet compartment where the pencils fit. She carefully unfolded the paper. It was a note, written in tiny, careful handwriting. It simply said this: I saw your drawings in the notebook under the mattress. The world needs to see what I saw. Don't give up on yourself. There was no signature. But Clara recognized the handwriting. It was Luisa's, the sister who pretended to sleep when she cried, the sister who never said anything, but who had seen everything. It was Luisa who had bought the pencils, with money he saved month after month, hidden in a tin under a loose floorboard. It was Luisa who had placed the gift on the table without a card, without a name, without a return address, because she didn't want credit. She just wanted Clara to have a chance to be who she was. Clara sat on the floor for an unreadable amount of time, the note in her hands crying a soundless cry. It wasn't sadness. It was the weight of realizing that, even in the moments when she believed she was completely alone, someone was looking at her with love. A love so discreet it fit on a note hidden inside a pencil case. The next morning, Clara boarded the bus to the capital. She carried her patched suitcase, her box of colored pencils, and Luisa's folded note in the pocket of her dress, close to her chest. Renato drove her to the bus station in his old pickup truck, in silence, and when she got out, he said only one thing. He said that the heron she had drawn was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen in his life, and that every time he looked at the painting on the wall, he would remember that he had lived with someone who knew how to see what he couldn't. The bus left at 7 in the morning, with the sun still low, casting long shadows over the dirt road. Clara rested her head against the window and looked at Cerro Manso shrinking in the rearview mirror. The houses, the church, the river, the crooked fence, everything diminishing until it became just a dot on the horizon. She put her hand in her pocket and felt the ticket against her fingers. And she smiled, not a big smile. A small smile, almost invisible, like everything that had always been most true to her. At art school, Clara discovered that the world was bigger than Cerro Manso had allowed her to imagine. She discovered that her features had a name, talent, and that what she hid under her mattress had value. Not the kind of value her father understood, not the kind measured in land or cattle. A value that made people stop, look, and feel something they couldn't name. 2 years later, Clara had her first exhibition. A small room in a modest gallery with 26 drawings hanging on white walls. They were all made with those same colored pencils, already worn, already short, already marked by use. In the center of the exhibition, the largest drawing was the heron on the river, and below it, in a smaller frame, was Louisa's note, framed. Louisa went to the exhibition. She came by bus, wearing the same dress she wore on Sundays, and when she saw the note on the wall, she covered her mouth with both hands and stood there, unable to move. Clara approached and held her sister's hands, and the two remained silent for a time that needed no words. Renato didn't go, but he sent, via the milk truck driver who passed through the capital every Thursday, a small box. Inside was a smooth river stone, one of those he used to bring, and a note with only 3 words written in large, crooked letters, like someone unaccustomed to writing. The note said, "The heron flies." Clara put the stone in her pocket and carried the note with her for the rest of the night. And when the last person left the gallery and the lights were turned off one by one, she was left alone in the empty room, looking at her own drawings, as if finally recognizing herself in a mirror. Not the girl who peeled potatoes while her father decided her future, not the silent wife of a man with a wide jaw, not the invisible girl from Cerro Manso, just Clara, whole, visible, seen. Outside, the city continued its usual noise. Cars, voices, footsteps, the sound of lives crossing paths unseen. But there, in that quiet room, smelling of paint, paper, and wood, something had been restored. Not repaired, restored. Like an old wall that someone carefully cleans and discovers, beneath the layers of paint, a fresco that had always been there, waiting, just waiting to be found.